Everybody, hope you guys are doing well. This clip of AOC is going viral for truly just doing the bare minimum, which is stating that unconditional backing of Israel actually ends up hurting America and is what enabled Israel's genocide in Gaza. Very, very just matter of fact sort of language, but for some reason this clip is going viral. So take a listen to this and let's talk about it.
I think that
There's
the
captions, it's a
United
little
States
bit
has an
kind of
obligation
quiet.
to uphold its own laws, particularly leahy laws. And I think that personally, that the idea of completely unconditional aid, no matter what one does not make sense. I think it enabled a genocide in Gaza. And I think that we have thousands of women and children dead that was completely avoidable. And so I believe that enforcement of our own laws
So
through the leahy laws, which
I don't know how quiet the audio was for you guys there, but what she just basically said is the idea of completely unconditional support for a country, no matter what they do, is unreasonable. You don't need to be on the left or the right. You can completely dislike AOC and still agree that that's just matter of fact. That just makes logical sense. Why are we supporting a country unconditionally, no matter what they do? It basically allows that country to act like a rabid dog, which is what's happening. Israel knows that it has unconditional U.S. support, so it's going to do whatever it wants, and it's going to act however it wants because there's nothing restraining it. If it knows that the world superpower that controls the global economy, that has the U.S., the U.S. as the reserve currency, and it knows it has that sort of backing, then why on earth would Israel try to be timid? Why would it try to make concessions at all? It won't, and it isn't. That's exactly what we're seeing here. And, it's shocking to me that this is for some reason still controversial for people. Of course, this is Fox News, but it's still enough to make it go trending on X. Shocking ignorance, for some reason, is what Fox News calls it. AOC says that U.S. aid to the Jewish state enabled genocide by Israel, sparking intense criticism. And this shocking ignorance and insensitivity, oh my gosh, wow, insensitivity command, should rule her out of any potential presidential bid or high office. Tom Gross, an expert of international affairs, said, an expert, quote unquote, of international affairs. So first off, I usually never even show anything that Fox News says. Interesting that, and I've mentioned this before, that whenever Fox News wants to try to gain sympathy for Israel, what they'll do is they'll use the word Jewish state instead of saying Israel. And it might be a small little difference, but it does make a difference. And they use that because they want to bring up and completely shove it in your face that this is the quote only Jewish state. That's the goal that they're trying to make when they put that sort of language in there. But separately from all of that, it is still trending in other circles, and we have one U.S. former U.S. deputy envoy to combat anti-Semitism during Trump's first term. And she says absolutely vile, disgusting, and crossing every red line of anti-Semitism. Oh my gosh. She says it crosses anti-Semitism for what AOC said. AOC, how dare you go to Germany, the country where Nazis engineered a systemic genocide of the Jewish people a mere 80 years ago. A mere, because 80 years ago is now very, and stand there with slanderous accusations of false genocide against the Jewish state of Israel. There's no way in hell that you will ever become a president of the United States. You have just disqualified yourself and ignited millions of Christians, Jews, and Americans of moral conscience who will make sure that the day you, a former bartender, dream of will never come. Shocking. This is the former U.S. deputy envoy to combat anti-Semitism. And it's really great that I actually brought her tweet up because it just goes to show that this position, I made a video on it yesterday, these U.S. special envoys to combat anti-Semitism, these positions exist. They're installed specifically to combat criticism of Israel. These positions are installed in the government stating that they're focusing on combating hate, which I'm all for. You want to stop hate towards any ethnic group? I'm all for it. But to use that position and then shield Israel and state that somehow making these statements that unconditional U.S. aid is now anti-Semitic, well, then we have a problem. And this is what they've continuously been doing, and this is what we see. It's important on us to actually call this sort of stuff out when we see it, because these people will keep saying this stuff until it becomes more mainstream, until more social media accounts support the statement, to make it to basically shift the Overton window and normalize this sort of thing, that now all of a sudden this is the sort of language that's considered anti-Semitic. This is the whole goal. This is kind of what's been going on for a very long time. They recognize, the Israel mob recognizes the importance of controlling and pushing a specific narrative in order to advance their goals. Now, this would also be a great time for me to show my statement. Again, this is not intended to promote hate towards any group of people. Now that I showed that, I want to show you guys something I find really, really interesting. And hello to I like to go to lunch. Thanks for messaging or for commenting. This is what I find interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So let me go ahead and share this tab here. And what you're looking at here is you are looking at a letter that was sent from John F. Kennedy's administration to the government of Israel at the time, back in the 1960s. And this is it's important. It directly relates to what AOC just said. And this document that I'm showing you here talks about John F. Kennedy's relationship with the state of Israel, specifically regarding making sure they don't develop nuclear weapons, and also how close the relationship between the United States and Israel should be. And in the article, and imagine a president would never, ever say anything like this today. In the article, it said that he then touched on interests in closer relationships with us in respect to defense planning. He, as in the prime minister of Israel at the time, which was Levi Eshkol, and what support must be anticipated from the United States in an event of an emergency. He said, while himself not very familiar with the field in detail, there would be strong feeling in going that closer association would be most valuable. At the time, the Israelis wanted to be as close as possible to the United States, while the United States was actually like, back off. You know, we don't want to alienate the Arab world, so we're going to have friendly relationship with you guys, but we don't want to get too, we don't want to alienate the Arabs from the Soviet. We don't want to alienate them and push them closer to the Soviets. Now, here's the part that's really, really shocking. And it's right over here. He also thought that while Israel friend of the United States, perhaps more likely to be a friend who would attract strong sympathy in an emergency, but not necessarily one for whom the United States would go to war for. In addition, time element would be all important. He thought closer U.S.-Israeli relationships would tend to undercut still widely held view that even though no plans now for manufacturing nuclear weapons, would be short-sighted for Israel not to move toward a position where it could exercise the option quickly if later circumstances required. What you're basically reading here, and the reason I'm showing it right now, is because of the fact that we had a president at the time that, it's crazy just imagining the way John F. Kennedy operated. He told the Israelis, we don't want you guys developing the nuke, and if you try to develop that nuke, we're going to cut off support for you. John F. Kennedy threatened Israel. Then Levi Eshkol, the prime minister of Israel, said, okay, if you don't want us to develop the nuke, then you have to promise us full security guarantees, full security assurances that if we go to war, or if an Arab country goes to war at Israel, then you guys, the United States, will fully back us. And the biggest slap of a face any president of the United States has ever said to Israel, John F. Kennedy said, no, we will not back you. If a country attacks you in war, we will not fight you with boots on the ground. Now, sure, we might support you and we might send aid, but we're not going to fight Israel's wars if Israel gets attacked, even if it's an existential threat. John F. Kennedy just blatantly saying the truth. That infuriated Israel. This was just a couple months before his assassination. Again, why am I showing this after showing something related to a clip of AOC? Because now we have mainstream media, and we have the former U.S. deputy to combat anti-Semitism stating that AOC's statements are anti-Semitic, while we had a president that went even further than that, basically saying, I don't even care if Israel gets put in war, we're still not going to fight their wars. Imagine what this former deputy would have thought about John F. Kennedy. So you see how the tides have turned in just 60-some years, the shift in the Overton window, which has now normalized the sort of rhetoric that we're starting to see in the media now, calling everything that comes to Israel anti-Semitic. This never existed back then. This is some sort of mind control manipulation sort of stuff, which makes you think that stating the very basic facts on the ground is now considered anti-Semitism. So absolutely shocking stuff, but let's move on here to the index of other news that's been going on in the world today, and one of them being this is truly pretty not pretty shocking. This is really unfortunate to see what's happening. The state of Israel today has approved basically de facto annexation of the West Bank. Now, this is something Israel made very clearly is their goals, especially during Trump's current administration. And what they just did today is allow for the calling of state lands, of Palestinian lands, and basically now defining them as state lands, which makes it easier for settlers to actually end up purchasing Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank. So take a listen to this clip here, and let's talk about it.
And by registering land as state land, this is what Israel is intending to do.
They did it now.
Makes it almost difficult for the Palestinian Authority or any Palestinian entity to negotiate in the future on this as a occupied land, because now it becomes officially and is at least under Israeli law an Israeli land. And
so let's just stop there. And the state of Palestine actually made a statement on X, and I really want to show you guys why this is so important, because this is what Israel is going to do. Israel is going to do, and it's going to go as far as it can, without having the world react. But it's going to go just as far, and it's going to slowly and incrementally do what it needs to do while keeping it just a notch below global condemnation. Why? Because if it does it that way, then slowly over time, it will end up achieving the exact goal that it intended to from the very beginning. But instead of doing it all at once, it's going to do it piece by piece in order not to garner global condemnation and isolation. So the state of Palestine made this statement today. Presidency condemns Israel's decision allowing it to classify the West Bank land as state property. The Palestinian presidency has warned of the serious consequences of the Israeli government's decision, and this is important because it's going to also directly call on the United States to act. Of course, we know the United States won't. To declare lands in the occupied West Bank as state property, describing the move as a grave escalation and flagrant violation of international law. The decision to classify West Bank land as state land under Israeli authority constitutes a direct threat to security and stability. These Israeli measures amount to annexation of occupied Palestinian land and signals the beginning of the implementation of annexation plans at entrenching the occupation through illegal settlement expansion. I'm just going to go straight to the end. The presidency calls on the international community, foremost the UN Security Council and the United States administration, to intervene immediately to halt dangerous Israeli actions and to compel Israel to comply with international law and international legitimacy resolutions in order to de-escalate tensions and restore stability. Basically pretty direct to the point of what they want. Now, we all know that the United States doesn't give a damn. What's really unfortunate about all of this is that prior to President Trump becoming president in this recent election, there was an article that was actually posted by Israeli media, Haaretz, the same actually media company that this previous lady interviewed in the last video I showed with AOC. There was actually an article posted by Haaretz that stated that Miriam Adelson wants one thing from Trump during his presidency, which is why she's backing him, $250 million, and it's total annexation of the West Bank. This was a Haaretz article prior to Trump becoming president this latest term. And when I made a video on it and I was reporting on it, and a lot of people, of course, already knew that this is pretty clearly what the goal is. And now we have President Trump, and this is exactly what seems to be happening. Now, of course, President Trump made a statement a few months ago where he was recorded and he said, Israel is not going to annex the West Bank. That's it. Israel is not going to annex the West Bank. No way in hell. And then we have things like this being passed where they don't need to fully annex the West Bank. They just need to take it piece by piece by piece. And it's actually in their best interest to do it this way and not to fully annex it at once because they don't want to receive global backlash. But eventually, we're going to wake up one day and the whole West Bank is going to be annexed. It already basically is. I can't explain it enough. You drive through the West Bank. The last time I've ever went, and the last time I likely will be able to go as a Palestinian with now a large platform, was in 2022. And when I went in 2022, the entire thing, it's totally under Israeli control. Even area A, B, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All the roads have checkpoints anywhere across the West Bank. The Israeli settlements are basically small towns. They're all up in the hilltops. They all have the best They all have the best view of the area. They're all militarized. These are settler militias across the West Bank. And how is this going to be reversed at this point? The only way it's going to be reversed is through international sanctions. And any country that tries to push the world to take that sort of action gets threatened by the United States. We saw this, a clear-cut example was Ireland recently that was pushing BDS legislation just in the occupied West Bank, not even totally against Israel, just to sanction any sort of trade with the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Then we have the current deputy U.S. Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism bragging about the fact that he was able to have the United States threaten Ireland. So now we're seeing something like this happen. And what do you think is going to happen? Do you actually think that we're going to see the Trump administration act? Do you actually think that any country in the EU is going to be able to take a stand against this and say, you know what, no, actually, we're not going to allow this because we don't want this to happen because of the fact that, you know, it's not going to be good. It's going to cause more tension in the region. You think any of them are going to be able to take action? No, because if any country in the EU decided to sanction Israel for this latest decision, well, the United States is going to start threatening those countries. So it's just going to be allowed to continue. And there's nothing, it looks like, in sight at all to stop this. There's nothing in sight at all to stop this. The biggest roadblock to all of this, by the way, is the United States government, currently under the Trump regime, that is basically working as an arm of Israel. We're going to be talking about the Epstein files. We've been talking about the Epstein files all this time. Trump's bought out. It's so bought out. You know, every presidency, it's very much so one and the same. This presidency especially. And when I say this presidency, I mean even in comparison to his first term, is unlike anything I've seen before. I've never seen a president that is just willfully selling away the interests of the United States of America for another country, for the country of Israel, just so that way he could get a lot of money. That's exactly what we're seeing here. Every single president has also been bought out by Israel. This is no different with President Biden. But right now, this is truly like we're seeing a president just let the rabid dog run freely. So it's really, really unfortunate. And if you guys just want a little bit of a personal story, my family is in the occupied West Bank. They're in a small village called Greene. It's next to Nablus, one of the main cities. And my family's village is between areas. It's chopped up in regards to the zoning between areas B and C. So under this land, parts of my family's village can immediately be taken as state land. For all those who don't know, and I keep saying I'm going to show video footage of when I was there on my trip. I should do that later, maybe tomorrow. Is that my family's village, although right now, you know, the closest settlement is the Yitzhar settlement right above my family's village, right next to the hilltop right next to us. If any Palestinian tries to build on their own land in my family's village, close to the mountainside, which is still part of their property, it's still their land, the settlers of Yitzhar will come down and they will destroy the building. They'll destroy the construction, or the IDF will come and the IDF will blow up the construction just straight up, or they'll bring a bulldozer to just completely demolish it. A family friend of ours back in my family's village, they were trying to build a new home on the side of a hilltop in my family's village, and it was going to be a really beautiful home. Honestly, the layout was beautiful. It looked like a really, really nice 2-story home, and the construction had to stop halfway because the IDF came and they stuck the Israeli flag, and they stated that they're not allowed to build this high up because for safety reasons, and it's now, you know, being occupied by Israel. They still have the Israeli flag, and IDF soldiers will come and eat lunch there. They'll just sit on the half-built home and eat lunch while looking down at the rest of the Palestinians in my family's village. So this is kind of what's happening here, and this sort of policy is only going to further that annexation. It's unfortunate, and I wish that there's, you know, more that we can do to kind of stop this sort of stuff. In the index of other news today, this is pretty funny, honestly, to see Netanyahu just outwardly saying such ridiculous stuff. Netanyahu stated today that Israel is the model ally of the United States, the model ally of the United States. So this is just a ridiculous clip. Let's take a listen and talk about it.
The United States just issued a Security Council memorandum, and it described its vision of regional alliances and anchor countries, and it called Israel,
Crazy.
the model ally. The model ally.
And they're clapping. They're clapping.
That obviously believes in democratic principles, but is willing to fight for itself. We don't ask for American boots on the ground.
Oh, wow.
We develop our own arms industry. By the way, that's something I discussed too with President Trump, with deep appreciation for American support given over the years by both parties, both sides of the aisle, for Israel's military assistance.
So let's just stop right there. There are a few things let's just get into here. First off, one of the most ridiculous statements he made is stating that Israel has never pushed the United States to put boots on the ground. Never, ever. Israel has been able to do everything on its own and never requests American boots on the ground. First off, they act as if the war in Iraq was never an Israeli concoction. That's what really just bewilders me. It was never a Zionist coup of the United States government. Every single time people talk about the war in Iraq, even really well-respected geopolitical analysts in the United States, of course, the ones that are featured in mainstream media, on CNN, on Fox, they'll never be able to state the truth, which is that the war in Iraq was heavily pushed by Zionists in the Pentagon. One of them being Paul Wolfowitz, one of the main ones, Lawrence Franklin, really trying to push for these sort of policies. And, we had General Mike Flynn. I've previously shown one of the clips of him, and it's a very viral clip. And he stated, the clip that goes, there's seven wars in 5 years, or 7 countries in 5 years. The war in Iraq was completely an Israeli concoction with American boots on the ground. Netanyahu consistently pushing for the war in Iraq. The entire Israel lobby, AIPAC, working in overdrive. I can still pull up articles till today from the Jerusalem Post, from the New York Times, way back in the early 2000s, where it directly says AIPAC, pressuring for war in Iraq, which would be good for America. We have Zionist shills like Ben Shapiro. We still have his article. I've showed it routinely, and you could find it right now. Just search up Ben Shapiro, why war in Iraq is good for America. This is literally the headline of a direct Ben Shapiro article. Mark Levin also been pushing for it. Every single individual that you can think of that supports Israel pushing for every single war America's fought in the Middle East. How many American boots on the ground? How many Americans died? How many Iraqis died for Israel? They stated it was after 9/11. We went to war in Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, which we know was a lie. And, this is kind of where things start to get blurred between, and this is what I'm just going to say blatantly, why did that happen? Why did Bush knowingly lie? Why did he lie about the fact that there were weapons of mass destruction? What was going on behind the scenes? Why, around this exact time, was Jeffrey Epstein also mocking George Bush with a photo in his apartment in Manhattan, with George Bush holding a paper plane and two Jenga cubes that look like the Twin Towers? Why was he mocking? Why does it seem like he was almost like he was bought out or he was blackmailed or something? The level of corruption in our government is truly worrisome at this point, and I don't know if you can undo this. I don't know if you can fix this. And then we have these people like Netanyahu with the gall of coming out publicly and stating Israel has never asked for American boots on the ground. And then, so that's the first thing. And then let's talk about the second thing he said, which of course was the fact that there's bipartisan support for Israel. Well, luckily that's dying out. The left is already actually across American citizens, support for Israel has flatlined. And this is especially true on the right and the left, especially conservative right that are younger than the age of 30. That's just absolutely true. So there's a generational divide there, and once the older generation starts to die out, what we're going to see is massive U.S. support for Israel flatlining. Unfortunately, in the U.S. government, though, our politicians are still bought out on both the left and the right, but that's starting to change. And even if politicians won't get elected right now, we're starting to see, even in this upcoming midterm elections, we're starting to see people campaigning specifically on the fact that they're anti-AIPAC, and that they support a two-state solution, that they support Palestinians. We've never seen anything like it before. We've never seen a time now where people are craving somebody that won't actually bend the knee to Israel. You know, they're craving that. We're seeing unconditional, we're seeing just massive support for individuals like Thomas Massey, Republican on the right. We're seeing massive support now for Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it's almost as if she's gaining bipartisan support now because of the fact that she's speaking out against Israel. So that support is flatlining, and it's going to be great to see, and I think we're all going to see it in our lifetime. Now, aside from the statements that he's made in regards to these two aspects, he also then started talking about the social media war, and specifically talking about how Israel is very well liked and has a very positive appeal in India. So let me go ahead and play this clip here. I thought it was pretty funny. Let me share my screen so that way you guys can see this.
India, who's coming here next week? Narendra Modi. Tremendous alliance between Israel and India, and we are going to discuss all sorts of cooperation. Now, India is not a small country. It has 1.5 billion people. Israel is enormously popular.
It's true. Enormously popular among the Hindu population.
Yeah, you do. Good. I'm glad you know it. But I want all of you to know it. And there are other countries that are coming to us, one after the other.
So, I mean, there you have it. India is massively popular in Israel. Israel is massively popular in India, and he's bragging about it. And they're figuring out ways to work together closer and closer. And you can clearly see this. I mean, when it comes to the information war that Israel is taking on social media, the eighth front that we've regularly talked about, it is an actual war that Israel is taking on social media. Their biggest allies in the information warfare online comes from India. How many pro-Israel accounts have you seen on X or Threads or Instagram or anything else? And then you click the about section of their profile, and all of a sudden you see that their location or the country that they're from is India. Every single time. Whenever I see a pro-Israel account, there's a very, very high chance that if you click that account's about profile, the description, the details, you'll see that account originates from India. Now, we already know that the CIA and the Mossad runs massive bot accounts. I mean, there are actually companies that you can hire for paid bot accounts, and there's state-level bot information warfare where they have accounts. They have accounts of maybe 50,000 bots, and these bots look so realistic. And there are Israeli companies that were bragging. I believe it was, what was the company? It was called Project Jorge. I believe it was Project Jorge. And they were bragging about the fact that their bots look so realistic that they've created even accounts on other social media platforms for the same bot. So if they have a bot specifically for Instagram, they'll create a matching Facebook and matching Threads and everything else for that same bot, a LinkedIn, to make it really look like a real person, and add family and everything else. So they have really good bot accounts where you genuinely can't tell they're bots. And they'll have them with the blue check mark and everything. And they brag about this. And then there's going to be a lot of them where these bots are just coming directly from India. But they love to brag about it. And you know what? Just truly go for it, because ultimately, especially with the new feature on X now where you can see the country of origin, it makes it very clear that a lot of Israel's support is just artificially generated. It's artificially generated. And they use that artificially generated support to make themselves seem like they have more appeal than they actually do. We saw the exact same thing, actually, funny enough, when it came to the Eurovision contests, because Israel wasn't ranking well in Eurovision, but every single time Israel shoots to the very, very top when it comes to voting for which country you want to vote, where the viewers can actually vote in. And it was discovered, and a lot of articles started coming out, that the Israeli government is cheating in Eurovision, and they're spamming with ads, state-level ads, not just from specific Israeli companies, but the Israeli state itself spamming countries and pushing for viewers to vote up to 20 times. No other country was doing this. No other country was spending money on paid propaganda coming directly from the foreign ministry. It's all about information warfare for them. Anytime they can fake their appeal, they'll go ahead and do it. It's all artificially generated. So it's hilarious to see, honestly. It's very, very hilarious to see. But that's what I wanted to show you guys there, which is just, yeah, again, pretty hilarious. Now, in the index of other news, another thing I wanted to show you guys, and this is pretty interesting, and it goes to show just how much our government is truly bought out and, again, terrified to criticize Israel. So Senator John Curtis grills a Trump State Department nominee, Jeremy Carroll, on his criticism of Israel. He's grilling him for the role as a State Department nominee, specifically because of his previous statements on his podcasts regarding criticism of Israel. This is wild to see. So take a quick listen.
Something very similar to this, but core among U.S. interest at international organizations is the protection of U.S. sovereignty and our national security, and I'm sure that we agree on this. What I didn't hear, and what is important to me,
right here,
high among these interests, is the protection of our allies.
There we go.
Namely Israel and Taiwan, both of which are consistently mistreated in these international organizations. And as Assistant Secretary for International Organizations, I view one of your core responsibilities to counter the systemic anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias in international organizations. Israel rarely asks for direct military intervention from the United States, but it does ask for diplomatic support and helping. So in your podcast of October 24, you said the United States spends too much time and energy on Israel, often to the detriment of our own national interest. So share with me specifically what is in the U.S. interest that has been harmed by sustained American support of Israel.
So I'm going to pause there right now because, unfortunately, I love what the guy's statements were. Not this man, but the Jeremy. And what's really unfortunate here is that instead of actually, sticking to his words and really standing by his words, he ends up capitulating to what this senator here is saying. But let's just talk about this entire interaction here. We have a senator, and this guy is questioning his nominee, the nominee for the State Department nominee, specifically because of his criticism of Israel. Again, acting like the very basic statements that sometimes America supports Israel to its detriment is now an anti-Semitic statement. He specifically said that one of the core aspects of a U.S. official, of a U.S. politician, or of a U.S. government official, one of the core aspects that he's very, very concerned about is whether or not that government official is going to be supporting their closest ally, Israel and Taiwan. Here's the thing. I think that there is a much stronger argument, much stronger argument that could be made for why the United States views Taiwan as an ally, specifically because of the microchips. You can make a very, very strong argument as to why the United States needs to make sure that it has that sort of allyship, so that way it can have, or for the semiconductors, excuse me. When it comes to Israel, what benefit is Israel to the United States? Genuinely, is it having an American military base in the Middle East? That's always the excuse we hear. Is it really because of that? Because we have American military bases all across the Middle East at this point. There's really no benefit. Is it so that way we can have, an experiment where they get to test bombs on Palestinians? Maybe you could say that, because Israel is using Palestinians as basically as basically lab rats to conduct their experiments on. Unfortunately, that's kind of what's going on. So that's the first thing. But the fact that any U.S. government official has to be cleared based on their support of Israel is insane. And it's really unfortunate that this dude could have really made himself look like a cool-ass dude. He could have really, stuck to his guts and stuck to his word, but he didn't. So I want to show you how he responded here.
Senator, thank you for that question. It's a good one. And I think in the context of this particular role, actually, we are Israel's closest ally. I mean, in that.
Yeah. So how is it
in that? So I think in the UN context, I wish the UN would stop being anti-Semitic all the time, and so therefore we could stop. There's a million other problems like the Rohingya,
hold that thought, because I kind of want to come back to that. But let me just clarify do you think it's all one directional? And what I mean by that is it's all U.S. going to help Israel? And do you recognize the intelligence, the military innovations and things like that that come back to the United States?
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Senator Curtis. So I, as mentioned before, spent 10 years under one of the greatest friends of Israel.
So let's just stop there, because honestly, it's like embarrassing to see for the guy. Come on, dude. Come on, dude. You had a moment, who's this, Jeremy Carl? Jeremy, you had a moment to really make yourself look like a badass guy who would have actually won a lot of public support. He had a moment here that he totally missed. And he's getting lectured by this older dude, this U.S. senator, who's grilling him, a U.S. senator fully bought out, that's not with the times, who's grilling him on his statements that are truly just correct statements, that the United States is spending way too much time on Israel to its own detriment. I think anybody that takes an unbiased look at what's going on will agree with that. Anybody. And he had a moment here to actually just stand by his word, but no, he capitulated. And all of a sudden now he started talking about anti-Semitism at the United Nations. The United Nations, really? Really? What anti-Semitism at the United Nations? Is it because the United Nations consistently votes on resolutions that are against Israel's actions in Gaza and the occupied West Bank? And that's considered now anti-Semitic. I know for a fact that based on how much this guy is sweating and nervous, based on how he's speaking, that he doesn't actually believe any of the bullshit that's coming out of his mouth. He doesn't believe any of it. But he's saying it anyways because he knows that if he wants to actually get his position, he's going to have to capitulate. And instead of just sticking to his word, like we've seen some individuals like Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then people on the left, very, leftists that didn't actually end up getting elected because they stood by Israel. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, regardless of how you feel about any of their politics, at least they stuck to their damn word. But this guy, honestly, the response is disgusting. It's disgusting. It really makes me feel pretty embarrassed for him. Actually, the United Nations is way too anti-Semitic because of the fact that they're voting on resolutions against Israel's apartheid in the occupied West Bank. That's anti-Semitic. What does the United Nations consist of? The United Nations consists of countries around the globe. It consists of the world. So if the world is taking action against Israel, maybe it's because Israel is acting in a way that the world doesn't like. But instead, we have one country, the United States, that's now going to call the entire globe anti-Semitic. Literally, the entire world is now anti-Semitic because they don't like the fact that Israel is acting like a rabid dog in the Middle East. And he actually comes out here publicly and says that. He says that because he knows these senators that are obsessed with Israel are going to like that sort of response. This senator, however, is not happy enough with his response, so he keeps grilling him about it, and this guy keeps getting frantically nervous, more and more nervous, and tries to subjugate
the U.S. diplomatic corps has ever had, and Secretary Schultz. Charlie Kirk was also probably second to no one in America in terms of his.
Let me just rein you in here because that's not
Brings
going
up
in the
Charlie
direction of
Kirk
my answer.
now.
Let me ask this: do you view diplomatic support as important or critical, or does that fall in the too much time and energy?
Senator, I think, thank you for that question. I think diplomatic support of Israel in the UN context is absolutely critical.
Are there other allies?
There we go. Totally nervous, capitulating. Dude, it's just embarrassing. He could have had so much support on the ground. Even if he didn't get into this position he wanted to, and even if he didn't get nominated, he has so much support that he could have really made something big of himself if he actually just stuck to his core values. But you can tell he doesn't believe the BS he's saying. You could tell he's frantically nervous, and he capitulated. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to see. So that's a little bit about what you see going on here. In the index of other news, somebody that I did bring up already, Marjorie Taylor Greene is truly just one of a kind now. After leaving office, she's going now, and she doesn't give a damn anymore. And she actually met with the mayor of Bethlehem. So this just happened. This is just posted a couple hours ago by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Here's a photo of her with the mayor of Bethlehem, and she posted this on X, and she says, "Today I had the honor of meeting with the mayor of Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, who is also Christian. He told me about Christian persecution happening in Bethlehem and also in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. Christians have been killed in the bombings of Gaza and churches have been attacked. Others have told me this as well, and I've seen videos on the line. The mayor says they only want to live in peace alongside their Jewish and Muslim neighbors in their homes that they legally own, yet the settlers continue to take their homes. There are approximately 139 IDF checkpoints now in Bethlehem with 41 square miles, but has now been reduced to 7 square miles. Bethlehem is the birthplace of Jesus. American Christians are largely unaware of the Christian persecution happening there, but need to learn about this and speak up. What is the Holy Land without Christians? And here's some more photos of her here. And it seems like they got her, what is this, a gift from the holy city of Bethlehem, from the heart of Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. I present this gift that carries weight with the spirit and the history of our holy city. It is accompanied by stones from the basilica's ancient foundations and a piece of wood from its sacred roof, silent yet eloquent witnesses to the authenticity of this holy site. So they went ahead and gave her that as a gift. And it really seems like one of the very few people that are speaking up is Marjorie Taylor Greene. All of these other politicians that brag about the fact that they're somehow, they're really religious Christians and they're conservative Christians, which is basically the entire Republican administration bragging about the fact that they're proud Christians, and yet the one time where their Christian faith demands them to stick up for other Christians, their fellow Christians in Bethlehem, instead they want to stand by the Zionists. It's really unfortunate. It's pretty disgusting. And this is not just for the conservative right, it's also on the left as well. But really, especially for those politicians that, that are proudly Christian, yet the one time their faith demands them to speak up for their fellow Christians, they won't do so. I'm not. I told you I'm very honest about my upbringing and everything. I grew up Muslim. I'm a-religious now. I believe in God. I kind of keep it at that. But I work with Christians in Bethlehem pretty consistently, and we're trying to work on projects there, and not just Christians in Bethlehem, but also Muslims in the occupied West Bank near Nablus. And we're working on projects there to get more eyes on the ground in the occupied territories. And I previously interviewed Elise Kissia. Just a few days ago, I posted that interview if you haven't watched it, and she's saying publicly that it's really the Israeli occupation. She even stated that the Palestinian Authority treats Christians in Bethlehem great. I mean, this is coming directly from her words in an interview that I posted a few days ago if you guys want to go ahead and take a listen. And then, of course, during that time, just a day before I did that interview, we had roaches like Congressman Randy Fine, who's a Jewish Zionist, come out and start saying that the reason there is a declining Christian population from 85% to less than 8% in Bethlehem today is because of Muslims. That's what he lied about and just went out publicly stating. For those who don't know, Randy Fine is just one of the most hateful people in Congress. Actually, the most hateful person in Congress. I think I can say that pretty confidently. And they lie. He lies. He lies. He acts like he gives a damn about Christians. That's what's so infuriating about this, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene, she actually does seem like she gives a damn about Christians. Thomas Massey as well. There's so many other politicians that are not even religious that have spoken out. Actually, a small minority that have spoken out. And then we have people like Randy Fine who weaponizes their suffering, or who uses their suffering in order to advance his interests. And he's constantly posting about how Christians are declining in the occupied West Bank, and then blaming it on Muslims as if he's completely ignorant to the Israeli occupation of the area, or the fanatic Israeli settlers that are persecuting Christians and Muslims, destroying their religious sites, destroying their crosses, everything. So this just happened a couple hours ago. Of course, you're not going to hear about one single politician that's going to speak out in support of this, maybe Thomas Massey on the right. And Mike Huckabee probably won't even bring this up. If anything, he'll still probably call Marjorie Taylor Greene anti-Semitic. It's interesting that we have to rely on Marjorie Taylor Greene to talk about Christians in the Holy Land, not Mike Huckabee, a Christian who's currently in the Holy Land, because he's more obsessed about talking about Israel. he's more obsessed about defending Israel than he is about actually supporting the people that are living there on the ground. I also previously, in my interview with Elise Kissia, the Palestinian Christian that's living in Bethlehem, that's been going through legal battles to keep her land in occupied Bethlehem, I also previously talked about how she saw actually Mike Huckabee, the lady that I interviewed. She saw Mike Huckabee at Christmas ceremonies in Bethlehem during the holidays. And she said that his body is there, but it doesn't seem like his head is actually there. That he sees the Palestinian Christians around him. He truly doesn't actually give a damn. And he's just there because he needs to be there, or he's trying to show face. And all the while, he's really just thinking about the Jewish settlers that he wants to protect in the occupied West Bank that are committing violence against Palestinians. That's all he, of course, really cares about, and he's just there to show face. Interestingly enough, Tucker Carlson talked to also Palestinian Christians and Jordanian Christians too about a week and a half ago now or so. He posted an interview with some, and Mike Huckabee quoted that and said, "Why don't you actually talk to me?" And Tucker Carlson responded back by saying, "Sure, let's set up an interview." So it seems like apparently we're going to see Tucker Carlson actually interview Mike Huckabee. I'm very excited for that interview, actually. I'm going to be watching it. I have a lot of comments to say on it. Part of the reason, because there's nothing Mike Huckabee can say that doesn't sound idiotic. And I hope that Tucker Carlson's interview with him is the same sort of questioning that he gave to Ted Cruz, because you can ask him very simple things. I really want the American public to hear about what his response is for deciding to host a meeting with the largest traitor to America, one of, just truly a treasonous figure, Jonathan Pollard, the convicted Israeli spy who spent 30 years in federal prison. I really look forward to Tucker Carlson simply asking him, "Hey, why did you have an off-the-record meeting with a convicted Israeli spy without the White House knowing? And it actually took the White House by surprise, including the CIA station chief. Why did you do that? Why did you do that?" It's going to be interesting to hear his response back, because it's going to be a perfect moment for Mike Huckabee to just truly tell the truth, which is that he's bought out and he's actually cares more about the interests of Israel than he does the United States. Also, just yesterday or the day before during the Olympics, he made a ridiculous post and he said, "I really hope the United States gets first place, but I also really hope that Israel gets second place." And then he showed a video about the Israelis. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This guy. I think that if there's anybody that, in a Trump administration right now, which is supposed to be a conservative administration, if they want to put a conservative figure in place for the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be the perfect role. She's conservative. She actually would represent an America First position, and she cares about Christians in the Holy Land. Why don't you put her there? Why don't you put her there? Well, because our politicians are bought out. They would never do that. So it's pretty shocking stuff. And then if you look here at some of the other comments here, thank you, MTG. You're a true America First warrior, and I hope that you get back into the Senate. And then other people on social media have also, where did we go here, have also been really saying similar things, because ultimately she's one of the very few that are going to go ahead and speak out about this sort of stuff. Let me see here. I think I saved some stuff. Doesn't look like this is all about ridiculous Netanyahu. So, that's everything in relation to that, guys. Ultimately, we'll see how things unfold moving forward. If you haven't yet, I'd appreciate it if you click the subscribe button below and give this video a thumbs up as well. Also, guys, I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and click join as a member. It's like $5 a month, and members get to see access to my daily videos that I only do for members. And you can also request video submissions there as well. So otherwise, I will see you guys later in the next video. Take care and have a great day.